Marvel's What If is the perfect idea for comic book stories, taking tales or character story plot points and asking the simple question of, what if this happened differently? And just seeing where it goes. I'm Adam Andrews with Top 10 Nerd, and this is my Top 10 Marvel What If universes. Coming in at number 10 is the tale of Ice Giant Thor. A perfect what if tale. It's almost surprising that it wasn't done before this point. In What If Thor in 2018, we get the story of what if Thor was raised by frost giants instead of Loki being raised by Asgardians. Simple, but brilliant. Laufey, the king of the frost giants, defeats Odin in their battle so long ago. And just as Odin took the infant Loki, Laufey takes the kid Thor and raises him as his own. Loki is obviously here too, and like usual, they form a pretty tight bond as adoptive brothers, Loki and Thor. Unfortunately though, due to Thor's strength and skill in battle, not to mention his fondness for summoning the power of lightning, he is praised among the frost giants and by Laufey himself, who begins to completely forget Loki, his actual true son. Instead, Loki finds the captured Freya in the dungeons and she teaches him how to use magic. Loki eventually busts her out of prison and together they attempt to escape to Midgard. They go to the ruins of old Asgard and attempt to repair the Rainbow Bridge until Thor and Laufey show up. Loki ends the life of his father while Thor unknowingly ends his mother with a blast from his giant ice hammer known as Ice Crusher. Thor almost takes out his brother as well, but at the last minute, he lets him go. Now we don't know what happens next, only that Loki went to Midgard, had kids and a family, and apparently became a hero. It ends on a rather sweet note, and I think that's lovely. Number 9, Fantastic Four as Cosmonauts? Next, let's explore the what if story that begs the question of what if the Fantastic Four were Russian. Well, for starters, their name is different. In fact, actually, they're pretty much all different. Now called the UFFF, or the Ultimate Federalist Freedom Fighters, the team is made up of Rudion Richards, the commie Reed Richards, who instead of stretching can just pop off his limbs and send them out over long distances, which is way more alarming than having to stretch. Natalia Romanova, the 616 Black Widow, is also on the team as Widowmaker and can control electromagnetic energy. Pyotr Rasputin is also on the team, but he's still just Colossus and has all those powers except his body and mind are deteriorating over time. And lastly, his sister, Ilyana Rasputina, is also on the team, who seems to have the powers of Sue Storm, but we only ever see her go invisible, which is way less cool. After the demise of Stalin in this history, the team is put under the KGB control, and Rudd Richards, easily the strangest member of the team, is not okay with it, especially after he accidentally ended the life of Giant Man while on a mission. Widowmaker makes widows of the wives of the leaders of the KGB, and the superhero team goes on to fight for freedom and equality, which is not at all how I thought the story would go, but hey, it's good. Number 8, Jane Foster becomes Thor. Now, thankfully, Jane Foster as Thor has happened in the true 616 continuity, and it was really awesome. But here, it's a little different in this what if story. Number 10, actually. It is Jane Foster who first picks up the hammer Mjolnir, not Donald Blake. In this story, Jane accompanies Dr. Blake on his trip to Norway, and when he drops his cane into a ravine in the original, she instead goes down there to get it for him. Striking the stick on the ground, just like Donald Blake would have, she becomes Thordis. Yes, Thordis. Unlike the modern interpretation, a female wielding Mjolnir gets an entirely new name in this what if. Wielding the power of Thor, Thordis fights off the Saturn Rock people and then turns the cane that she seems to have just stolen from Donald Blake into a hairbrush to better fit in with her feminine alter ego, I guess, because men don't use hairbrushes. She has pretty much the same adventures as Thor, but crucially, she is rejected by Odin for not being a man. Oh, and for some reason, Sif gets with Donald Blake, which is kind of weird. This tracks all the way up until the events of Ragnarok, when Odin decides to give the hammer back to Donald Blake because he can't accept Jane as Thor. And then, as thanks, he turns Jane into a different god and then marries her. It's kind of gross, it's kind of really strange, it's kind of uncomfortable, but luckily it's only a story that comes from asking the question, what if? Number 7, World War II Space Nick Fury. 1979's What If number 14 gives us a very different approach to history. Instead of World War II being fought in Europe, it is instead fought in space. In this alternate timeline, we discovered interstellar travel much earlier in our history, and as such, the World War II we fight is more like space sector war between Sector Alpha and Sector Beta in space. And don't ask me to define where those areas are because I cannot. I don't know how space works. As this is still set at the same general time as the regular World War II though, some of the same characters are going to be involved, including the original Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos. This story has new high-tech weaponry, fishbowl helmets, and aliens, and it's a good bit of fun. We learn in the story that Admiral von Strucker is actually working with the alien Axis powers to create a master race. So it seems that in this alternate world we can master interstellar travel, but we still just can't accept each other for our differences yet. Damn, that's kind of realistic, ain't it? Number 6. Civil War Captain America. Honestly, I'm kind of a fan of this what if story, but it does have some strange moments and twists on characters that you might not expect. For example, the story starts out with our Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes time displaced to the Civil War era. Bucky is the commander of a regiment and he is not a good guy. Apart from being an unhealthy amount of racist, he has quite the lack of moral compass. Our Steve, however, obviously starts out as his scrawny and less than impressive self, but with a heart that shines through as strong and good as gold. After sustaining injuries from not following his commander's orders, he is recovering in a nearby Union camp tended to by a Private Wilson, taken in by the Shawnee at a young age. Sensing the goodness in his heart, Wilson bestows a kind of eagle animal spirit on Mr. Rogers that makes you on the outside whatever you are on the inside. That's how he describes it. And this happens just as Bucky Barnes stumbles upon their location. The power of the ritual blasts away Barnes, and when we see his face again, he has become the White Skull. Which, I mean, you could just call him the Skull because skulls are white, but whatever. Steve, on the other hand, has become a mystical super soldier wielding a shield and sporting a headdress. It's insane. He goes on to save presidents, end the war, and leave a lasting legacy of Captain and General Americas that continues all the way to the modern day. Number 5. Barbarian Hulk. Alright, this one requires a bit of unpacking. So, in issue 23 of What If, the Incredible Hulk has fallen in love with a woman named Jarella, a green-skinned queen from the subatomic world of Kai who was brought back to our world when the Hulk was unshrunk in the actual continuity. Now, this happens in regular continuity like I just said, but she is unfortunately laid to rest after sacrificing herself to save a boy from some rubble during a Hulk battle. In this story, however, Jarella lives, and the Hulk and her are shrunk again so they can go and live happily ever after on the subatomic level in the kingdom of Kai. Now, Kai, for some reason, takes a very medieval, Roman / just ancient in general approach to lifestyle, and Hulk, who now possesses his full intelligence, becomes king of the land alongside Jarella. Soon after that though, a dark plot by some dark gods and their dark minions rears its ugly head, and the Hulk, alongside a group of other subatomic barbaric heroes, goes to thwart them, facing off against a second Savage Hulk that came out of nowhere that seems to have been taken down in like 2 comic panels. It's really weird, and that's where it ends. I'm assuming Hulk just kind of stays on the subatomic level and never returns to Earth, living as a microscopic barbarian for the rest of his life. Probably the best thing for him, honestly. Number 4. Thanos. Okay, so bear with me here. In the What If Infinity Dark Reign story, Norman Osborn, after becoming the director of Hammer and the Dark Avengers, figures out how to get his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, defeating the Illuminati and all the heroes and becoming the Goblin King. Now, using the gauntlet, he creates a world completely under his tyrannical rule, and he teleports his horrible father from the past to show him the things that he has done in an attempt to get his father's love and admiration, something he has never had and still doesn't, honestly. His father begins to bash him for becoming a tyrannical ruler, which is a little worse given the fact that it was his father's fault that Norman even turned out this way. Teleporting them both back to the Dark Avengers base, the entire team has been wiped out. And as Norman is trying to figure out what happened, it's revealed that Thanos has shown up to collect the gauntlet in his awesome Thanos fashion. It's actually pretty sweet. Unfortunately though, not even the Mad Titan is a match for someone wielding the gauntlet, and he is dispatched. But not before he tells Norman that he is trying to get the love of someone who will never give it to him. After Thanos is gone, Norman's father, being forced by the Infinity Stones, begins to tell Norman how great he is, and Norman loses it, wiping his father from all existence, all time, and all space. Which was dumb, because now Norman Osborn's existence is a paradox, and he, and this world that he created, fade into nothingness. So yes, Thanos is the hero here in a very, very weird way. Number 3, T'Challa Star-Lord. One of the better, if not weirder, episodes of Disney Plus's What If animated series revolves around a universe where instead of Peter Quill, it was actually Prince T'Challa of Wakanda who was abducted by the Ravagers all the way back in the day. T'Challa, as the new Star-Lord, convinced the Ravagers to become a Robin Hood-like group who steal from the rich and give it to the less fortunate. Under his leadership, they became icons, and they saved a lot of people, recruited and persuaded lots of heroes and villains to join the Ravagers to help the galaxy, one of which even being Thanos. T'Challa heard of the orb on Morag, the one from the beginning of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and he goes there to retrieve it, being stopped by Korath the Pursuer just like Peter Quill was in the movie. Unlike Peter though, Korath actually recognizes T'Challa as Star-Lord, and he joins up as well. He saved Peter Quill from Ego, saved Drax's family, got Nebula and Thanos to reconnect, and even stole a device from the Collector that could terraform ecosystems and save entire planets from starvation caused by overpopulation. You know, the entire thing Thanos was trying to fix. He eventually joins the Guardians of the Multiverse to fight the insanely powered Ultron, but that's a story for a different time. Number 2, Spider Actor? In this What If number 19, Peter Parker makes the simple decision of stopping the robber who would go on to take Uncle Ben's life. That simple act robs Peter of the lesson of the responsibility of having great power, and instead he turns to a life in the public eye. Now, as an actor, Peter Parker turns his focus towards making films and protecting his reputation at almost any cost. He becomes the publicist for both the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, as well as Daredevil, all while still retaining his Spider-Man persona. He even gets a cool cape for a little bit, and that part is, I think that's like the cherry on top of this whole story. Now when JJ exposes him to the public though, we see a bit more of an edge to this Spider-Man when he threatens him and even eventually ends his career, which comes back to bite him when Jonah forms the Sinister Six, including himself. And he's not really impressive in that team, he's just kind of there. It is only after Daredevil jumps in to save Peter and fight the villains that Peter does actually learn that old power and responsibility thing, and it all goes thumbs up from there. And finally, in at number 1, Intelligent Design God Hulk What If Planet Hulk. That's a long title. Most comic book readers, and especially fans of Marvel and the Hulk, know of the storyline where the Illuminati banished the Hulk from Earth to send him to another planet. He ended up crash landing on Sakaar and became a gladiator turned liberator turned ruler of the planet until his ship self-destructed, taking out his family and bringing him back to Earth with a vengeance that no guilty person was safe from. What if Planet Hulk ends up asking the question, what if the Illuminati's banishment had hit its original target? Now in this story, Hulk lands on an incredibly peaceful and serene planet, and sure, he goes a bit ragey at first because he just got banished from Earth, but he eventually realizes the planet is inhabited by a race of peaceful creatures, little tiny peaceful creatures. Over long periods of time, the Hulk helps this race to evolve and become a thriving civilization. They end up viewing the Hulk as their god, and he basically acts as one that leads them to wealth and prosperity. It's one of the few Hulk stories that doesn't end in tears, and I'm more than happy to talk about that for that reason alone. And that is the list. I hope you enjoyed hearing about my favorite Marvel What If stories. I'm Adam Andrews. I will catch you little nerdies on the flip-flop. Peace out! Ha!